The 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. The 16th Street Baptist Church bombing occurred on September 15th, 1963, in Birmingham, Alabama, and was carried out by white supremacist terrorists. 4 members of the Ku Klux Klan branch put 19 sticks of dynamite tied to a timing device beneath the steps of the church's east side. This can be described by Martin Luther King Jr. as one of the most vicious and tragic crimes ever perpetrated against humanity. The explosion at the church killed 4 girls and injured between 14 and 22 other people. Although the FBI concluded in 1965 that the church bombings was carried out by 4 known Klans and segregationists, no prosecutions were carried out until 1977, when one of them was convicted of first-degree murder of one of the victims, Carol Denise McNair. She was age 11 at the time. The 16th Street Baptist Church bombing marked a turning point in the United States during the Civil Rights Movement and also contributed to support for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by Congress. Birmingham had established a reputation in years before the bombing as a tense, violent, and racially segregated city where even attempted racial integration in any form was met by violent resistance. Martin Luther King Jr. described Birmingham as probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. In the 8 years preceding 1963, at least 21 different explosions were recorded at black properties and churches. None of these incidents resulted in fatality. The city was dubbed Bombingham as a result of these tags. On the early morning of September 15th, 1963, 4 United Klans of America members, Thomas Edwin Blanton Jr., Robert Edward Chaps Bliss, and Bobby Frank Cherry and Herman Frank Cash, put a minimum of 15 sticks of dynamite with a time delay under the church stairs near the basement. An unknown man called the church at 10:22, and Carol Mall, a 14-year-old girl, answered the phone as the acting Sunday secretary. Before hanging up, the caller just remarked 3 minutes. Not even a minute later, the bomb exploded. The attack killed Addie Mae Collins, who was 14, Carol Denise McNair, 11, Carol Rosamond Robertson, who was 14, and Cynthia Wesley, who was also 14. The explosion was so powerful that one of the girls' bodies was decapitated and badly mangled, and that the only way to identify her was by her clothing and a ring she was wearing. Another girl had a chunk of a mortar stuck in her head that killed her. And the Reverend John Cross, the church's pastor, the church's pastor recalled in 2001 that the girls' bodies were discovered stacked on top of one another, clung together. When the 4 girls arrived at the emergency clinic, they were pronounced dead. There were some trials, but nothing really happened with them. On September 4th, 1963, Blanton Jr. was indicted on allegations of unlawfully obtaining and transporting dynamite. And on October 8th, he and 2 acquaintances, John Hall and Charles Cage, were convicted in a state court of illegal having and transporting dynamite, only receiving a $100 fine, which is about $850 2021, and a 180-day suspended prison sentence. In 1976, after William Baxton, an attorney, publicly threatened to expose the Department of Justice, suppressing evidence that would lead to the prosecution of the bombing perpetrators, he was formally presented with some evidence compiled by the FBI. Robert Cambless, then 73, went on trial in Birmingham's Jefferson County Courthouse on November 14th, 1977. And on September 24th, a grand jury indicted, a few months before that, in September, he was indicted on 4 counts of murder, but would only, after the pretrial hearing, would only be tried for 1 murder, which that of the murder of Carol Denise McNair. And then he would end up being released on October 18th on a $200,000 bond by family members and supporters. He would end up dying in October 1985 at the age of 81. And then on October 24th, 2001, Thomas Edwin Blanton Jr. was taken to trial before Judge James Garrett in Birmingham, Alabama, and he would plead not guilty and decline to testify. And May 6, 2002, Bobby Frank-Cherry was tried before the same judge in Birmingham, and he would also plead not guilty. In legislation, this bombing, the Birmingham campaign, and the August March on Washington, and then all this following Kennedy's assassination in November 1963, Lyndon B. Johnson, who then took over as president, would sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964 into law July 2nd, 1964. I just said that twice. Major civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr., were present. This legislation barred discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, or national origin in order to secure African Americans full and equal legal rights.